everyone, this is Yana Smakula for SimonsStamp.com and thank you for joining me today. In this video, I'll show you how to create beautiful heat embossed backgrounds using Simon's Henna pattern stamp set. This is a wonderful set that allows you to build your own backgrounds using individual henna-like elements. There are a lot of different pieces included in this set that you can use to create repetitive patterns or beautiful designs that resemble henna tattoo art. If you can't quite picture using these in your card making, go to Pinterest and type henna. You'll be amazed by the amount of stunning and inspiring designs you can find there. I decided to use several images from this set along with white embossing on craft cardstock to create simple, beautiful backgrounds. I'll show you how easy it is to make these, and I'll also use them to create 2 cards at the end of this video. I'm going to start by creating a repetitive pattern using this element. I've mounted it onto a clear block using grid lines, and I also have Simon's large grid paper pad on my work surface. These 2 elements are essential when creating a repetitive pattern. They will help you better align your images and will help you to keep things straight and evenly spaced. You can also use a stamp positioner like Misty to stamp a repeating pattern. You'll need a medium or a large size Misty to be able to move your paper inside the tool. I only have a small Misty, so I'm using a clear block here instead. I mentioned I will be doing heat embossing, and I will heat emboss this image in white embossing powder. I've prepped my paper with an anti-static powder tool to eliminate any grease or static and keep embossing nice and clean. I've also taped the paper down to the grid pad so it won't move when I do my stamping. I'm using Simon's embossing ink, and I'm going to start somewhat in the center of my panel, and this, by the way, is cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and I'm going to stamp my first image. By using this embossing ink, my images remain wet for a longer period of time, allowing me to stamp several images and not have to add embossing powder to each single image right after it was stamped. I'm not going to do the entire background, but I will stamp a good amount of images before I go to add embossing powder. If you've stamped lots of the images and by the time you go to add embossing powder it doesn't stick to those that you stamped first, your embossing ink pad might be a little dry and it might need a refill. So I'm using grid lines on both the clear block and the grid pad behind my paper to align my image and have it evenly spaced. I stamped the first row, I started in the middle, next stamped the image to the left and then to the right. Next I moved down and completed the second row of images. After that was done, I decided I needed to stamp this design in between the 2 rows to make my background fuller. I'm going to remove my paper, add white embossing powder, and this is white embossing powder from Hero Arts, and we'll go ahead and heat set this powder. You can choose to not heat set it at this point and keep on stamping the design onto the background until you have the entire background filled, but I didn't want to risk sticking my finger into the non-heat set embossing powder, so I went ahead and melted it. Next, I repeated the process. I taped my paper onto the grid pad one more time, and this time I taped it on the sides. I used my anti-static powder tool again and kept on stamping the design using grid lines on both clear block and grid pad as a guide. Here's a look at the completed heat embossed pattern. It looks very beautiful, and even though not everything was perfectly spaced, it is still stunning, I think. To create the second pattern, I've mounted several images onto a large clear block, and I'm going to stamp all of these at once several times onto my background to fill the most part of the paper. I have a large flower and several leaves mounted here, and they all make up one floral design. By stamping these all at once, I'm saving time, and I'm also able to replicate this design easily. Sometimes when you have multiple stamps on a clear block and attempt to stamp all of them at once, not all of them stamp well. Well, this is not the case here. These stamped beautifully right away. Again, you can use your stamp positioner if you're afraid it might not stamp well the first time, or if you just like to double stamp things, but I didn't have any problems here, so I used my clear block. I added same white embossing powder and heat set it using my heat tool. Now here's a quick look at another repeating pattern I created using a single stamp from this Henna pattern stamp set. I think it is very beautiful and looks like lace on skin. Very elegant. So I created only 3 patterns here, but there are lots more possibilities and a ton of other designs you can make using these stamps. I used 2 of the patterns to create simple encouragement cards. For my sentiment, I went with "You Are Enough," and I combined a die-cut "You" from the "You Matter" set by Laura Basson and "Are Enough" from the Stripe Greeting stamp set. I die-cut "You" out of gold glitter paper and also white shimmer cardstock. I needed the layer of white to add a little drop shadow and help the die-cut stand on my background. I also die-cut "You" out of this foam adhesive sheet from Scrapbook Adhesives, just so that I could add dimension to my sentiment. I adhered the white shimmer die-cut directly onto the foam one and then offset the gold one on top. The "You Are Enough" part was heat embossed using Simon's antique gold embossing powder onto a strip of white cardstock. I used a white gel pen and added some white detail to my background. I filled in some of the circles and also added a few extra dots here and there. Now finally, I added some sequins, gold sequins, and adhered those around a sentiment for a little pop of gold. It was very easy to stamp these backgrounds using Simon's Henna Patterns stamp set, and I encourage you to give it a try and stamp a few patterns of your own. You can find the list of supplies I used for this project down below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up and to subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet done so. And check out Simon Says Stamp for more creative inspiration. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you next time. Bye!